Hello. Assuming you've learned the rules of the Czech grammar, or at least are learning them, including using those 4 textbooks that I reviewed in an earlier video, and also using the idea of making silly stories that capture the rules of the grammar, as I showed also in a different earlier video. Now you need lots of practice absorbing these rules so that you don't have to keep thinking what the rules are. So even if you know them, you need them to become instinctive. Now, a traditional way of doing this in Czech education is to give you multiple choice questions. And this has passed over this idea of multiple choice, in effect, or filling in the individual words into many of the textbooks that are used to teach Czech. Here's an example of this. Here's some book which is a collection of exercises for testing your language ability, and I bought this maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just 250 pages of things like this. Hlavní nádraží, the main train station, yeah. A velký, B velké, C velká. So the answer happens to be B, velké, B, or to město není, malá, malý, or malé, and so on. It happens to be C there. And you just go on, and I got to about 70 pages into this 250-page book, and I was falling asleep. I didn't feel I learned anything. I didn't feel I absorbed anything. It was so slow and so boring. And if the point of it was that I would absorb the rules, well, it didn't work, because written tests give you time to think and to fall asleep. What we want is instead for things to be able to be absorbed quickly and recalled quickly. And that's really not the Czech way of education. But a few years ago, in the second city of Prague, which is called Brno, a gentleman called Vladimír Nepustil decided that this way of education wasn't very good. And he came up with a different approach, which would give people an instinctive feel for the language. Although he was teaching English, he came up with a whole new approach, which he calls the Nepustil method of learning English. And he wrote it up in several books, textbooks, exercise books. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, sometimes you find a few fantastic books for teaching English that work just as well in the opposite direction for learning Czech. And his books, or at least some of them, are just like that. They're gold mines. This guy's a gold mine for learning English. Now, his book series is called Angličtina, netradiční, nepustilová metoda. So the English language non-traditional method from Nepustil. Vladimír Nepustil is his name. And I'll put a link to where you can get these books. It comes in 4 volumes, actually. The first volume is mostly English grammar, and the second one, a much thinner volume, which is called Dodatky k učebnici. Yeah, and this means the appendices to the textbook 1.1. Now, it does have an explanation of the grammar rules of English, not too heavy, but just to get you going. And for the most part, although there are a few interesting things in there, I think you can leave those to one side, because it's these 2 remaining books which are worth the price of the course alone and can be used in this direction for learning Czech. And the way they work it, in fact, is by massive exposure to thousands of sentences, each of which is slightly different and each of which embeds in it grammar rules, so that you'll soon begin to feel what feels right. And in a sentence that you want to create, your brain will have absorbed the patterns from these thousands of rules, and it'll just know you'll have a feel for the grammar. And it's a great compliment, I feel, to actually learning the grammar formally by studying the rules. This natural method, as some people call it, or the sentences method is a great supplement to give you a feel rather than this constant thinking. So if we look in this book, it just has thousands of sentences, such as I was in the pub. Ja jsem byl v hospodě. You were in the pub. Ty jsi byl v hospodě. And so on. Goes on and on and on. And I was in the cinema. Ja jsem byl v kině. He was at the cinema. On byl v kině. And so on. And it goes on like this and on and on and on, covering the whole of the grammar through sample sentences. What are you doing? Co právě děláš? That means actually what are you doing just now? And you see, it just has page after page of all these sentences which you're meant to absorb by constant repetition. And if you just do 1 page a day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, within a year, you'll have covered this whole book. It gets into slightly more. It starts off with basic sentences, and then my office is better than your office. Moje kancelář je lepší než tvoje. Your office is better than hers. Tvoje kancelář je lepší než její. And so on. And it's very comprehensive here, covering he's killed somebody. It'll kill you. Just really, really comprehensive. And in the second volume, just the same. Vedlejší věty, the next or following sentences. It's a long time. It's been 3 months since the machine broke down. These, you see in the second volume, the sentences become much more comprehensive. So, the thieves tied him up so that he couldn't move or escape. I made 1 more copy of the article so that you wouldn't have to buy the whole magazine. So they aren't all just single sentences or single words or tiny fragments of sentences. Some of them become quite comprehensive sentences. And by the time you've worked through the first book and then on to the following sentences, you will have just absorbed a feel for the language. Now, the textbook, as I've mentioned, is quite, well, it's work, isn't it? It's not like me reading a novel. And although I normally don't recommend textbooks because they're quite dry, this one also has the great advantage that you can get, and I highly recommend, the supplementary audio. And I have the audio for this. So let me try to start it here. So, if I'm not mistaken...
Přívlastkový i samostatný tvar přivlastňovacích zájmem.
Yeah, so here we have the English first and then the Czech. So, my office is better than yours. Moje kancelář je lepší než tvoje. But in the audio, it goes in the opposite direction. And this is how I used the audio. First I listen to the Czech, then I stop the audio and try and think what the English is. So,
moje kancelář je lepší než tvoje.
My office is better than yours. And then I listen to the English which follows it.
My office is better than yours. Tvoje.
And I was correct. And then I think, okay, my office is better than yours. So what was that in Czech again? Moje kancelář je lepší než tvoje. And I would keep doing this. When I went on long walks every day, I go for 2 to 4 hours on a long walk, and I would play this on my MP3 player, listen to the Czech, think it through, stop it, translate it into English, then listen to the English to confirm, and then in my head try and translate that English back into Czech, and then do it for another related sentence.
Kancelář je lepší než její.
So, tvoje kancelář je lepší než její. Your office is better than hers. Let's hope we're right.
Your office is better than hers.
Yes. So, your office is better than hers. Twoje kancelarz je lepszy niż jej. And I would keep doing that. And after doing this, it doesn't involve very much effort thinking it through, a bit of time, and because all the sentences in a group are related, it starts to form patterns in your head. And after just a few months of working through this, I found that I could automatically understand intuitively the endings for things, and this is so comprehensive, this set of books, that you have a very good grasp of the grammar in all sorts of different contexts. So I highly recommend this method as a supplement to the reference grammars and textbooks, the absorbing sentences method. It's very, very beneficial. I'll put links to this in the description.